You're listening to Kennesaw State University's Atlanta Student Movement podcast, where we share untold stories of Atlanta's role in the struggle for civil rights. These stories give voice to unsung heroes who stood up against segregation in a city at war with itself, in a city that started a movement.
Welcome to episode 4 of the Atlanta Student Movement podcast. This episode is titled Secret Chamber of Commerce Meeting. Here with me are James Lee.
Hello.
Eric Merriweather.
Howdy.
And myself, Lucas Rice. Let's get into it.
It's March 6th, 1961. It's been 5 months since the pivotal October 19 sit-ins. Since then, there have been a cavalcade of protests, arrests, and resistance for change. Atlanta was crumbling inside and out.
Lonnie King and Herschel Sullivan were asked by Jesse Hill, a business executive and civil rights activist, to attend a secret meeting at the Chamber of Commerce. The meeting was arranged by A.T. Walden, a civil rights lawyer, and Ivan Allen, Jr., the mayor of Atlanta. The meeting was called to get a written agreement to end the boycott and integrate the lunch counters.
King and Sullivan were actually not aware of the meeting's purpose until they arrived.
And the purpose was to sign an agreement to end lunch counter segregation in over 300 establishments in Atlanta. There was also a clause for the rehiring of about 500 to 600 African American employees who were fired during the sit-in campaign.
This was a big deal because this was the first time that any white group in the South had signed an agreement to end segregation in any area of Georgia. Under this arrangement, though, the desegregation wouldn't be implemented until the following fall after the court-ordered integration of local schools. This was a 5-month wait.
Now there was a lot of feelings of betrayal during this time. Lonnie King felt betrayed by the elders in the black community for agreeing to postpone desegregation. When he initially pushed back against the postponement, Dr. Martin Luther King Sr. was the one to reprimand him, saying Lonnie was going to wreck this town.
So what do you guys think about that exchange there between Dr. Martin Luther King Sr. and Dr. Lonnie King?
You know, I can't really say what they were thinking, the elders were thinking at the time, but I'm curious if it was like fear of what would be done if they kept pursuing this desegregation thing.
That's a good point.
But then they were, they're in a sense veterans, so I don't know if it was fear or maybe they just thought like, oh, we have what we have now, we'll just wait to continue this fight later on.
Yeah, I understand the younger folks' perspective, and they just want to keep fighting. But I am more on the side of Dr. Martin Luther King Sr. because he's been fighting his whole life. And to get this agreement signed, which was unprecedented for him, it was worth waiting 5 months.
Yeah, I feel like what it seems like to me is with King Sr., it seems like maybe he saw this young guy, Dr. Lonnie King, he saw him maybe trying to jump the gun, or it seemed like he may have been trying to say, hold on, slow it down a little bit, and I think that's kind of the difference in the younger generation is because younger people are always, about doing things quickly, and these people who have come before them and who have been fighting this fight for years already, they are saying, hey, we've dealt with this and we've been through this, so just, slowly roll a little bit. And on the other side, though, I imagine that from Dr. Lonnie King's side, it probably had to have been really, really disheartening to come in here and to see your leaders acquiescing to, to this agreement that none of you, that it's not ideal, that it's not an agreement you'd want. And even though, it may have been quote unquote 5 months in the future, there was no guarantee that it would actually come to fruition. And I think that may have been where Dr. Lonnie King's
Yeah, that's how he felt. He was
Yeah.
afraid that the 5 months would just lead to nowhere.
Yeah.
Well, and then my other thought was, before I forget, is I was wondering, him telling him to back down, was he afraid that what his generation fought for, would that be lost in this fight?
Yeah.
Because, like, as we were saying, they already fought for a lot of stuff. So I'm wondering if he was like, be happy with where you are at now. It could get a lot worse. And so he was like, don't fight right now. Just wait. And they got used to, the older generation got used to living the way they live. But then the younger generation is like, hey, why are we segregated? We want to drink from the same water fountain that you drink, that the white people drink from. So that doesn't seem right. Water is water. So I'm curious about, well, like, his thoughts of segregation and everything.
And maybe not even not fighting, but maybe being more conscientious and being more like taking a step back and being more methodical in it, which I think is what they kind of ended up doing. And I think that's why they ended up being as successful as they were with what they were trying to do. So getting back to what we were talking about a second ago, it brought to mind a man named John Calhoun, who was the head of the NAACP at the time. And he was one who put the entire thing into perspective for Lonnie.
John Calhoun was born in 1899 and had dealt with segregation his entire life. To him, 5 months was a short time in comparison to a lifetime he's already experienced.
However, when Lonnie King left the meeting, Ivan Allen held a press conference and stated that Lonnie had agreed to end the boycott and the last counter would reopen the next day, segregated.
People were upset and very angry, as one could imagine. Dr. Lonnie King tried to resign, but the students wouldn't let him. So he stayed, and a mass meeting was called a few days later to challenge the agreement made on March 6th. Over 2,000 people came and expressed their disappointment.
The crowd was unruly, and Dr. Lonnie King asked Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to come speak to them and calm them down. Dr. King was resistant at first, but he immediately made an appearance when Lonnie King told him they booed his father.
Dr. Martin Luther King Sr. also joined them at the meeting, and the crowd disrespected him when he tried to take over and speak to them. One woman even told him that his civil rights leadership was part of the problem. The crowd erupted after that.
So at that moment is when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stepped in, and he calmed the crowd down with a speech of his own that saved the agreement. Lonnie says that Dr. King's greatest speech was not the one at the March on Washington, but instead it was the one that night at Rush Memorial Church.
And that fall, on September 27th, 1961, over 300 lunch counters and restaurants were desegregated. It was the beginning to many changes in Atlanta.
That being said, does anyone have any closing thoughts before we head out?
I think it's really interesting to see so many different strategies in play. Some people wanted to go a little slower. Some people wanted to just keep fighting faster and longer. But at the end of the day, I think both types of plans were necessary for them to get where they eventually got, which was desegregation, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime you have individual people coming together to create anything, you're going to run into differences in opinions. And I think it was cool that they were able to, in spite of that, come together and really make something happen that without their efforts, I don't want to imagine where we'd be.
Oh, yeah.
I don't either, yeah. It's a very dark thought, just imagining still being segregated today, especially with more people. But I like to think that, if we were still segregated in this generation, there would be a Martin Luther King, a Dr. Lonnie King, a Malcolm X, you know what I mean? I like to think there's people around that are like them today. But unfortunately, there's no need, because all that is done. No more segregation.
Thank you.
No more slavery. It's all through.
But I think we can all agree we still have a long way to go. But anyways, thank you so much for listening to episode 4. We hope you enjoyed all the stuff that we've put out there, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Kennesaw State University's Atlanta Student Movement podcast. For more information, check out our podcast homepage for details on the project and how you can contact us. Thanks for listening.